The Light Beyond Loss, Part 1. The Shattering Silence. Grief is the uninvited guest that visits every heart at least once. It doesn't knock, it doesn't wait for the right moment. It enters with the weight of absence, the chill of silence, and the ache of what was. At first, grief isn't even something we can name. It's the numbness in our chest when someone we love is no longer here. It's the quiet moments when we forget, then remember. It's the smile that fades when we realize the person we'd share it with is gone. Loss shatters our reality. It shakes the core of who we are. It strips away the illusion of permanence and forces us to face the truth of our mortality and fragility. And yet, through the pain, through the rubble of the life we once knew, there is the potential for something else: transformation. We often talk about grief like it's something to get over, a tunnel we must push through to reach the other side. But grief isn't linear. It doesn't follow a tidy arc. It weaves in and out of our lives. It changes form. It surprises us. And over time, we come to understand that we don't get over grief. We grow around it. The first impact of grief is often shock. Even when death is expected, disbelief settles over us like a fog. "This can't be real," we whisper. "They were just here." It's the mind's way of protecting the heart. In that fog, we go through motions, make arrangements, comfort others while struggling to understand how the world keeps spinning. As the shock wears off, pain emerges. It's visceral. It may come in waves that knock us down, or it may be a slow, steady ache that colors every moment. We're haunted by memories, some tender, some painful. We ask questions that won't be answered. We reach for things that are no longer there. And in that aching, we begin to feel the full magnitude of our love for the one we lost. But even in that pain, there is a sacredness. It's proof that we loved deeply, that our hearts were open, that we lived fully enough to miss someone when they're gone. And that love, though changed, still lives on. Grief shapes us. It etches new lines in our souls. It softens some, hardens others. It brings clarity about what matters, who we are, and how precious time is. In the wake of loss, we begin to notice things we once missed: the beauty of morning light, a friend's voice, strength we didn't know we had. As grief unfolds, many experience the stages of mourning, not as a neat sequence, but as recurring themes: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. Each stage carries its own weight. Denial may feel like peace. It shields us from the full reality. It's the brain's way of letting the heart catch up. But eventually, denial gives way to anger at the unfairness of it all, at God, at ourselves, at the randomness of life. And though anger can feel frightening, it too is healing. It reconnects us with energy, with passion. Then comes bargaining, the quiet mental negotiations. If only I'd called more. If only the doctors had acted sooner. We replay the past, hoping for a different ending. It's the mind's desperate effort to avoid the finality of death. But slowly, we learn there are no bargains, only what is. Depression often follows. Not always the clinical kind, but a heavy sorrow that dulls the spirit. It's when the full weight of the loss settles in. We may withdraw, cry without warning, feel empty, but this too is part of healing, the heart grieving fully, honoring what was lost. Eventually, some form of acceptance begins to emerge, not being okay with the loss, but softening around the pain. A space opens where we can remember with less agony, where joy coexists with sorrow, where we begin to reintegrate into life, not as it was, but as it now is. Still, the journey doesn't end there. Grief isn't just letting go, it's holding on differently, carrying love forward, finding meaning in the pain. That's where the light begins to break through the cracks. We ask, how has this loss shaped me? What have I learned about love, presence, and life itself? We begin to seek purpose, not to justify the loss, but to make something beautiful from it, to sow seeds of compassion, to reach others who are hurting, to live more fully and bravely. And in doing so, we discover something profound. Healing isn't forgetting, it's remembering differently, smiling at a memory instead of only crying, realizing the person we lost still lives within us, in our choices, in our actions, in our hearts. This is the journey we'll explore, not just surviving loss, but being transformed by it, finding light beyond darkness, becoming deeper, kinder, more connected souls, not despite our grief, but because of it. The Light Beyond Loss. Part 2. The Quiet Companions of Grief. Grief doesn't follow a schedule. It doesn't expire after a set number of days or weeks. Instead, it becomes a companion, sometimes loud, sometimes quiet, sometimes invisible until a memory stirs it awake. At first, we expect it to shrink, to fade, but over time, we come to understand that grief doesn't necessarily get smaller. We grow bigger around it. In this new relationship with grief, we begin to notice its many faces. There's the grief that weeps in the night, the grief that hides in the smile we give to others, the grief that lingers in songs, in scents, in anniversaries. It becomes part of our rhythm, not always in sadness, but in awareness, a heightened sensitivity to life, to love, to loss. Many people who experience deep grief speak of the loneliness it brings, not just the absence of the one who is gone, but the sense of being misunderstood. The world often expects grief to be brief, manageable, tidy. But real grief isn't convenient. It's messy. It doesn't obey rules. It can make us feel like outsiders in rooms full of people. This is why finding support matters, not necessarily from everyone, but from someone. A person who listens without trying to fix. A friend who says, "You don't have to pretend with me." Sometimes that person is a therapist. Sometimes it's a stranger in an online forum. Sometimes it's a journal we write to at 3 a.m. What matters is letting our pain be witnessed, named, honored. Then there are the moments of guilt that creep in. Survivor's guilt. The guilt of laughing again. The guilt of not grieving enough or correctly. These feelings are common, but they're not a sign of doing grief wrong. They're a sign of being human. We want meaning, we want control, and loss challenges both. Grief often disrupts identity. We are no longer just a spouse, a child, a sibling, a friend. We are now a widow, an orphan, the one left behind. These titles can feel heavy. We may wonder who we are without the person we've lost. We may feel unanchored, but in that uncertainty, something beautiful can happen. A slow reassembling of self, a tender redefinition. This transformation is rarely dramatic. It's subtle. We notice we've gone a full morning without crying, that we laughed without guilt, that we remembered a moment without being crushed. These small milestones aren't betrayals of love. They're signs we are still living. Healing is not about moving on. It's about moving with, carrying the grief, not discarding it. Letting it walk beside us, not weigh us down. In doing so, we become more attuned to others' grief. We see the sadness behind someone's eyes, the hesitation in their smile. We grow more compassionate, more patient, more open. Sometimes we begin to sense the presence of the person we lost in unexpected ways. A phrase someone says, a breeze that feels familiar, a dream that feels more like a visit than a memory. Whether spiritual signs or psychological echoes, what matters is the comfort they bring, the reminder that love doesn't end. It changes, but endures. One of the most powerful shifts in grief is giving our pain purpose. Some create foundations, others write books, some simply show up. For a neighbor, a friend, when we give our grief somewhere to go, it becomes compassion. It becomes healing, not just for ourselves, but for others. And yes, there are setbacks. Days we feel we've gone backward, when tears come unexpectedly, when a holiday or a smell reopens the wound. These moments aren't failures. They are revisits, not regressions. They are the heart remembering. There's no timeline for healing, no expiration date on sorrow, and no wrong way to grieve. Some build shrines, some scatter ashes, some light candles, some speak to the one they lost in thought. Every path is valid. Every act of remembrance is sacred. Over time, we begin to integrate the loss into our story, not as an end, but as a turning point. A chapter that hurt more than we thought we could bear, but also shaped us. We become both who we were and someone new, wiser, more aware, more tender. In grief, we learn to hold opposites, joy and sorrow, love and loss, presence and absence. Healing is not about replacing what was lost. It's about living with the absence, honoring it, and loving anyway. And perhaps this is the greatest transformation, realizing our love was never meant to die with the one we lost, that we can take it and use it to build, to help, to heal, to live lives that echo their memory, to shine light that they once brought into the world. This is not the end of grief, but it is the beginning of grace. The Light Beyond Loss. Part 3. The Stories We Carry. Grief speaks in stories, not always out loud, and not always in full sentences, but in fragments, images, sensations, moments frozen in time. A laugh echoing in the kitchen, a half-written birthday card, a voicemail we can't delete. In grief, we become the keepers of memory, the guardians of lives that can no longer speak for themselves. And as we carry these stories, we often return to the same moments, the final goodbye, the thing we wish we hadn't said, the time they made us laugh until we cried. These recollections can sting, but they are sacred. They keep our connection alive, not through the body, but through remembrance. We learn that love isn't bound by time or limited by presence. Love endures through story, through impact, through legacy. Every kind act they performed, every life they touched, ripples outward. When we remember, speak their name, tell their story, we keep those ripples moving. But sharing stories isn't always easy. Many grievers fear forgetting, their voice fading, their eyes blurring in memory, the world moving on. That fear is valid. Memory becomes both comfort and burden. To ease that weight, we can create rituals of remembrance, not just on anniversaries or holidays, but in ordinary time. Lighting a candle, donating in their name, cooking their favorite meal. These small acts anchor us. They remind us that remembrance is love, not just sorrow. Grief asks us to rewrite our story, not by erasing pain, but by weaving it into something larger. We're no longer only defined by loss, but by who we become through it. In doing so, we reclaim power, not to escape pain, but to shape it into something sustaining. This is deeply personal. For some, it leads to art, writing, painting, music. For others, to service, mentoring, advocacy, caregiving. And for many, it's simply loving better, with more presence, gratitude, and awareness of life's fragility. One of grief's quiet gifts is perspective. When we've walked through loss, what once felt urgent loses its grip. We see through the noise to what matters: connection, kindness, meaning. We waste less time. We love more freely. We let go of grudges more easily. Grief doesn't erase pain, but it deepens our humanity. It teaches us life is fragile and beautiful. It gives us eyes to see others suffering and the courage to sit beside them. Healing isn't about fixing, it's about presence, about witnessing brokenness and still believing something good can grow. And over time, joy returns. Not the same joy, but a deeper one, the kind that coexists with sorrow, the kind that knows how much things cost and chooses love anyway. This is grief's paradox. We become more alive after loss, not because the loss was good, but because we begin to live intentionally. We know time is short. People are irreplaceable. Love must be spoken while we can. Life becomes more vivid. We learn to celebrate what remains: a sunset, a child's laugh, the strength we didn't know we had. These moments aren't signs we've stopped grieving. They're proof our grief has taught us how to live more fully. Eventually, grief becomes a source of connection. We meet others on the same road. We recognize each other in subtle ways, in the pause before answering, "How are you?" And in those moments, we find solace. We are not alone. Grief is universal, even if each experience is unique. In a world that moves too fast, grief slows us down. It pulls us back to what's real, and in that stillness, we hear what matters: love, connection, presence. These are the things we carry. Grief cannot take them, so we continue, holding memory in one hand, strength in the other. We learn to walk with both, to speak their name, to live in a way that honors, not through perfection, but through truth. Grief, faced gently, becomes a mirror. It strips the superficial. It calls us home to who we are. And though it breaks us, it can shape us into wiser, more loving souls. Some days it still hurts. That's okay. Let it hurt. Let it heal. Let it remind you how deeply you loved and how deeply you still can. The Light Beyond Loss, Part 4. Meaning in the Aftermath. When grief is fresh, the idea of meaning feels distant, almost offensive. How can anything meaningful come from loss? How can absence hold purpose? These questions are natural, and early grief leaves little space for answers. At first, we just survive, but as time passes and pain settles into deeper layers of the soul, we begin to sense an invitation, not only to rebuild our lives, but ourselves. Meaning is not something we're handed, it's something we create. And in the aftermath of grief, meaning becomes the thread that helps reweave life's fabric. It doesn't erase pain or fix what's broken, but it offers a path forward, a reason to get up, a reason to continue. For some, meaning arises through legacy, carrying forward the values, dreams, or work of the person lost. A mother starts a scholarship, a husband finishes his wife's book, a sister joins her brother's cause. These acts don't remove grief, but they give it direction. Others find meaning in transformation. Loss pushes us to examine life with new eyes. We recognize what no longer serves us. We seek deeper connections. We begin to live more authentically because we've seen how fast life can end, and we won't waste what remains. Sometimes, meaning shows up not in action, but in perception. We notice beauty where we once rushed past it. We grow more patient, more forgiving. We understand that small moments, a smile, a hand held, and "I love you," carry lasting weight. Grief shows us how meaningful the ordinary truly is. But meaning isn't always big or obvious. It may be simply getting out of bed, smiling at a stranger, making someone laugh. Grief narrows our world at first, but slowly, meaning expands it again. It reminds us we're still capable of joy, purpose, and love, and meaning changes with us. What feels purposeful in one season may shift in the next. That's part of healing. We're not returning to the old life. We're creating a new one that includes our loss, but isn't only about it. This journey often deepens our connection to others. Grief breaks us open and makes us more empathetic. We become more present for others' pain. We show up without needing to fix. In those moments, we find shared meaning. Love and loss are universal. No one walks this road alone. Spirituality can also play a role. For some, faith offers a framework for understanding. For others, spirituality is about connection to nature, the cosmos, or love beyond the physical. Many grievers feel a continued bond with the one they lost. Not the same, but still real. This continued bond isn't denial, it's integration. It says, you are gone but not erased. We carry them in our values, our choices, in how we treat others. We live in a way that reflects their best qualities. That's meaning in action. There will be days when meaning feels far away again, when the ache returns, when absence feels unbearable. In those moments, we return to this. We're still here, still loving, and love itself is a form of meaning. Healing through meaning invites reflection. What did they teach me? How did they shape me? What do I want to carry forward? These questions reclaim agency. Even in grief, we have power. The power to remember, to honor, to live on. Sometimes, meaning comes from surrender. Not giving up, but releasing the need to explain everything. Accepting that some things will never be fair. Yet even in surrender, we still choose how we live. We can soften, open, grow. There's a quiet strength in those who carry grief with grace. Not the kind that hides pain, but the kind that shows up anyway. That chooses love again and again, even knowing it may one day hurt. That's real courage. Meaning isn't about replacing what was lost. It's about honoring it, letting our scars become maps, not of pain, but of healing, creating beauty from what's broken, living lives that reflect our love. There will always be hard days, but there will also be light, moments when laughter returns, when we help others, when we feel grateful for the love we had, even if it came with sorrow. This is the light beyond loss. To rise, not despite grief, but through it. To walk forward, eyes open, heart wide. And in the still moments when memory stirs, we may whisper, you are part of me. I carry your light. The Light Beyond Loss. Part 5. Carrying the Light. As we continue walking through grief's long, winding path, we begin to understand that healing doesn't mean returning to who we once were. It means becoming someone new, someone shaped by love, by loss, by all the moments in between. Grief marks us, not as broken, but as changed. We begin to feel that grief, far from being just sorrow, is also a reflection of love. We would not grieve so deeply if we had not loved so deeply. And when we realize that grief and love are two sides of the same coin, something shifts. We stop resisting the pain quite so fiercely. We begin to honor it as a measure of the bond we shared. And from that place, we can begin to carry the light. Carrying the light doesn't mean we are always happy. It doesn't mean we're over it. It means we've made space within ourselves for both sorrow and joy. It means we carry the memory forward, not as a wound, but as a source of strength. Sometimes carrying the light means sharing our story, not for attention or sympathy, but as a beacon for others who are still lost in the dark. It's saying, I've been where you are, and while I still ache, I've found a way to keep going. In doing so, we offer something powerful, hope. Hope is not the denial of pain. It's the quiet belief that healing is possible, that life can still hold beauty, even after the worst happens. It's the candle we pass to others when their own light flickers, and often sharing our light rekindles our own. Some days carrying the light looks like resilience, like getting up when we'd rather stay under the covers, like choosing presence when we feel numb, like saying yes to life when part of us still wants to say no. Each act of courage, no matter how small, is a light in the darkness. Other days, carrying the light looks like remembrance, like telling their story out loud, like visiting a place they loved, like celebrating their birthday with laughter instead of tears. These acts don't erase the pain, but they transform it. They become sacred rituals that link the past to the present. And then there are days when carrying the light means simply allowing ourselves to feel, to cry without shame, to miss them without explanation, to admit we still hurt. That too is strength. That too is healing. We discover that grief is not an enemy to be conquered, but a teacher that reminds us to hold each other close, to speak love while we can, to live more fully, more honestly. It strips away what doesn't matter and reveals what does. It also makes us more human. We stop pretending to have all the answers. We become gentler with ourselves and with others. We begin to understand that everyone is carrying something, that even smiles can hide pain, and this compassion, born of suffering, becomes one of our most beautiful qualities. In time, we may even find gratitude, not for the loss itself, but for what the love and grief have given us. A deeper awareness, a wider heart, a more urgent desire to live well, to love boldly, to honor those who came before us by how we move through the world now. This gratitude doesn't erase the grief. They live side by side, and when they do, something sacred happens. Our hearts stretch. We are no longer just surviving, we are transforming. To carry the light is to make a promise. I will not let this love die. I will live in a way that reflects it. I will create, give, connect, and remember, not because grief demands it, but because love deserves it. This is how we keep them with us, in the lives we touch, in the compassion we show, in the stories we tell. Their name becomes part of our language. Their influence becomes part of our actions. Their love becomes part of the world through us. And yes, grief will still revisit us on anniversaries, in dreams, in quiet, unexpected moments. But it no longer controls us. It walks beside us, softened by time and memory, shaped into something we can carry with strength. We become the light bearers, the ones who remember, who continue, who honor, who love. And in doing so, we become part of something greater, a long line of people who have known loss, who have fallen and risen, who have chosen love again and again. This is what it means to heal, not to forget, but to remember with tenderness, not to move on, but to move forward, to live not despite our grief, but through it, with clarity, with courage, with heart. And when we meet someone else in mourning, we will know what to say. Not platitudes, not advice, but simply, I see you, I've been there, and I'm still standing. In that moment, our grief becomes light, and that light becomes love, and that love becomes life. The Light Beyond Loss, Part 6, A New Wholeness. By the time we reach the far side of grief, if such a place exists, we begin to see we are not who we were. Though we might once have longed to get back to normal, we now understand there is no going back. There is only forward, toward a different kind of wholeness. This new wholeness includes our sorrow. It includes the one we lost. It includes the version of ourselves left behind. In many ways, it's a deeper, more honest wholeness, one not built on avoiding pain, but on surviving it. Wholeness after grief isn't perfection. It's not about having it all figured out. It's about knowing that even though we carry pain, we also carry wisdom. We've been broken and rebuilt, layer by layer, choice by choice. This process is gradual. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it's happening at all. But looking back, we see it. The subtle shifts, the softened edges, the deeper presence. We've changed, not just in how we grieve, but in how we live. This change touches every part of us. We listen more closely, speak more gently. We understand silence in a new way. We stop rushing through life. We pause. We breathe, because now we know how quickly everything can change. Grief gives us clarity. We become clearer about who we are, what matters, what we're willing to let go. Some relationships fade, others deepen. We stop trying to please everyone. We start living in alignment with our truth. Grief can also expand our spiritual lives, not always in a religious sense, but in a sense of connection to nature, to the universe, to something beyond the physical. We begin to sense that love doesn't end. It continues, just in a new form. This helps us heal. We stop needing to let go the way others expect. We let go of pain, not the person. We release the suffering, not the love. We say goodbye to their presence, but not their influence. This bond becomes strength. We ask, what would they do? Or what would they say? We feel their guidance, not as ghosts, but as part of us. They live through us. Grief deepens our sense of purpose. We spend time more intentionally. We create, help, build, or simply care more. Not always because we plan to, but because we feel compelled to make life matter. Grief becomes legacy, not just theirs, but ours. A legacy of love, of compassion. We become the people who can sit with pain without fixing it, who offer presence, who find light in dark places. Still, we miss them. We ache sometimes. Grief never disappears. It becomes part of our landscape, like a scar that doesn't hurt, but reminds us where we've been. We live alongside that scar. We touch it with reverence. We understand that our capacity to hurt equals our capacity to heal, and that we're more whole now because we've known loss. Grief teaches duality, joy and pain, holding on and letting go. We stop needing clear answers. We live in the gray, and in that space, we find color again. We laugh again. We celebrate without guilt. We dream, not because we forgot, but because we remember life is worth living. There's courage in this living. It says, I've suffered and still stand. I've lost and still love. I've been broken and still remain whole. This wholeness doesn't shout. It radiates quiet peace, peace born of knowing we've faced devastation and grown a deeper heart. We stop performing. We trust that we're enough, even in our mess. We extend that grace to others. We see their pain. We're patient. We help build a kinder world. Grief doesn't leave us empty. It fills us with presence, with clarity, with the need to be here, now. And when our time comes, we hope to be remembered not for our loss, but for our love, for how we carried the light even when it was heavy. This is wholeness, not forgetting, but remembering differently, not erasing the past, but integrating it, not replacing what was lost, but honoring it, and building a life strong enough to hold both sorrow and joy. This is the light beyond loss. The Light Beyond Loss, Part 7, The Love That Remains. In the final stretch of grief's long journey, we come face to face with something we may not have expected: peace. Not a peace that erases pain or denies the loss, but one that coexists with it. A peace rooted in the truth that although someone we loved is gone, the love itself remains. Love is grief's beginning and its ending. It is why we mourn, and also what helps us heal. Over time, we learn that death ends a life, but not a relationship. The form changes, but the bond stays. And this enduring love becomes the foundation of how we move forward. At first, we may think that moving forward means moving away. Away from the memories, away from the pain, away from the person we lost. But in truth, healing asks us to move with, not away from, the love, to bring it into our decisions, our values, our daily lives. We begin to understand that every act of kindness we show, every moment of presence we offer, Every time we forgive, connect, or create, these can all be acts of remembrance. They are how we continue the love. They are how we speak the unspeakable. How we say, you mattered, you still do. And that changes everything. We no longer measure time only in days since loss, but also in the strength we've gained, in the lives we've touched because we knew what it meant to lose, in the love we still carry, even if we carry it alone. We also begin to recognize that grief is not something we get through. It's something we live with, grow with, and ultimately make peace with. It becomes a part of us, woven into our skin, our spirit, our story. It's no longer a sharp edge we avoid, but a contour we've come to understand. There is great power in that understanding. It means we can live without fear of forgetting. We don't have to cling to every detail in panic. We can let the memory evolve, knowing the essence of our love remains intact. We can trust that we carry them, not in things, but in who we've become. This is where transformation takes root. We are no longer only the ones who grieve. We are the ones who remember, who love, who live on with intention. Our loss becomes part of the lens through which we see the world, not in shadow, but in clarity. And from this clarity comes presence. We stop taking the small things for granted, the warmth of sunlight, the sound of laughter, the comfort of a friend's touch. We become more fully awake to life because we know how fragile it is. We stop waiting for perfect moments. We live now. Some find this awareness motivates change, a new career, a move, a reconnection with estranged loved ones. Others find it in simple shifts, more time outside, more open-hearted conversations, more rest. Grief becomes the great realignment. It points us back to what matters. And in time, we realize something profound. We're not just honoring the one we lost. We're honoring the love we shared by how we live. We become their living legacy. Their story continues through our courage, our care, our compassion. Even our scars become part of that legacy. They tell the truth that we dared to love, that we dared to hope, that we opened ourselves fully, knowing the risk, and that even after heartbreak, we chose to keep living. This choice is one of the most powerful acts of love we can offer: to rise again and again, to smile through tears, to comfort others even while carrying our own pain, to love not less because we've lost, but more. And through it all, the love remains, in dreams that bring their face, in quiet thoughts, in the way we speak to children or offer grace to strangers, in every small gesture that says, I remember, I carry you still. There will be days, still, when the grief returns with force. A song, a date, a smell. But these waves are no longer tsunamis. They are tides. They come, they go, and we learn to let them wash over us, trusting we will rise again. What once broke us now becomes our strength, not because we are untouched, but because we have been touched deeply, and we allowed that to shape us, because we didn't close our hearts, even when it hurt, because we chose to keep loving. And in the end, that love becomes the light we carry into the world, not just for ourselves, but for others, for those just beginning their own grief, for those who feel alone in their sorrow, for those still waiting to believe healing is possible. We become proof that healing does not mean forgetting, that grief is not the enemy of joy, that pain can soften and love can last. We become the hands that reach out, the hearts that understand, the voices that say, you are not alone. And perhaps, in doing so, we fulfill something essential. We complete the circle. We take what was given to us in love and offer it forward. We turn loss into light, sorrow into wisdom, and memory into meaning. That is the love that remains. That is the legacy we build. That is the light beyond loss. The Light Beyond Loss. Part 8. When we learn to love again. After profound loss, it can feel impossible to imagine opening our hearts again. Love may feel dangerous, like something that can only lead to more pain. We might think, I can't go through that again. Or, I've already loved as much as I was meant to. And so we protect ourselves, consciously or not, from new beginnings. But grief, over time, shows us something surprising. The heart doesn't close forever. Even after it's been shattered, it still wants to beat. It still wants to connect. It still longs to give and receive love, not in place of what was lost, but in addition to it. This is one of grief's quiet miracles. We discover we have more love in us. We learn that love doesn't run out, it expands. It isn't limited to one person, one season, one story. Love, at its best, is renewable. It grows from the ashes. It emerges from the cracks. It waits patiently for us to be ready again. And readiness looks different for everyone. For some, it arrives sooner than expected. A new relationship, a new child, a deep friendship. For others, it takes years. There is no right timeline. There is only the tender recognition. I think I'm ready to feel again, to risk again, to care again. But loving again doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't diminish the love that came before. It simply means that the heart is big enough to hold both the past and the present, that we can honor what we've lost while still opening to what might be. In fact, the people we lost often shape the way we love moving forward. We carry their lessons, their laughter. Their presence lingers in our values, our instincts, our choices. They help us become better partners, better parents, better friends, not despite their absence, but because of their impact. Sometimes we fear that new love will erase the old, but it never does. The human heart is vast. It holds layer upon layer of memory, hope, sorrow, and joy. One love does not cancel another. Instead, it adds to the richness of who we are and what we give. Grief can make us more intentional about love. We become more honest. We say, I love you sooner. We show up more consistently. We're less interested in games or pride. We've known what it feels like to lose someone without warning, and we choose not to waste time. That clarity makes love more vulnerable, yes, but also more beautiful. We love with eyes wide open. We know nothing is guaranteed, and so we treasure what we have while we have it. We hold our people closer. We love with less fear and more presence. We also become more compassionate when others fear love or push it away. We recognize their armor. We've worn it too. And sometimes we become the ones who gently say, it's safe to open again, when you're ready. And when new grief enters our lives, as it inevitably will, we may find ourselves better equipped, not immune to pain, but familiar with its terrain. We know that we will feel everything and that we will survive it. We know that love is worth it, even when it hurts. We also begin to love life itself more fiercely. We notice the beauty in small things, the warmth of sunlight, the kindness of strangers, the way someone laughs. We stop postponing joy. We learn to celebrate what's here, now. This love of life doesn't deny sorrow. It embraces it. It says, I know what it means to lose, and that's why I'm going to live. It's why we dance even with heavy hearts, why we sing even with tears in our eyes, why we keep building, keep giving, keep dreaming. Some may not understand this. They may ask, how can you love again after so much loss? The answer is simple but profound. Because I have loved before. Because I know how precious it is. Because I want to honor the ones I lost by continuing to love. That is how we carry them forward, not just in grief, but in joy. Not just in memory, but in action. We let their love flow through us, into the world, into the people we meet, into the lives we touch, And sometimes, in quiet moments, we may feel their presence most strongly when we are loving, when we are holding someone close, when we are laughing freely, when we are doing something they would have loved. In those moments, we don't feel separate from them. We feel united, as if love built a bridge between this world and the next. So, yes, we learn to love again, not because we've forgotten, not because we've healed completely, but because love is our truest nature, because grief has shown us how deep our capacity is, because the heart, though bruised, is still beating. And that heartbeat, that willingness to risk again, is the sound of resilience. It is the song of a soul that has survived and still believes in beauty. To love again is not to replace what was lost. It is to expand, to stretch, to make room for more life, more connection, more light. This is the light beyond loss, a light that grows with every act of courage, every risk of the heart, every moment. The Light Beyond Loss. Part 9. Grief as a Human Bond. As personal as grief feels, it is also one of the most universal experiences. Every culture, every time, every human heart will face loss. Yet in the depths of grief, it can feel incredibly isolating. We wonder if anyone truly understands. We might even feel ashamed, afraid to speak our sadness too often or too loudly. But grief is not something to hide. It's something to share, not because it shrinks it, but because it lessens our loneliness. When we open our hearts and speak our pain, we create space for others to do the same. We turn sorrow into solidarity. Grief becomes a bridge between souls. When someone says, "I've been there," it doesn't erase the pain, but it eases the isolation. We feel seen, held, and in that moment of shared humanity, something shifts. Our grief, once private, becomes communal. Communal grief is ancient. Many cultures have long practiced mourning together. Through ritual, song, story, silence, these customs remind us that grief is not a solitary burden, but a shared part of life. In mourning together, we say, "You are not alone." In modern life, we often lack these shared spaces. Grief becomes something we manage quietly. Bereavement leave is brief. Support can be scarce. Expectations to move on come too soon. But the human spirit craves connection, especially in pain. That's why grief groups, memorials, shared rituals, and simple conversations matter. They create circles of care where vulnerability is welcome, where no one has to pretend, where we can cry, remember, and just be without explanation. Even the act of telling our story, writing, speaking, or sharing with a friend can be healing. In naming our grief, we give it shape. We begin to understand it differently. And when we hear others' stories, our empathy grows. Grief can deepen connection. We see it in friendships formed in hospital waiting rooms, in strangers comforting each other at vigils, in families brought closer by loss. Shared pain, when met with care, becomes a uniting force. We also start to see grief in others. After our own losses, we notice it in someone's silence or eyes. We become attuned to the invisible weight people carry. That awareness helps us build a more compassionate world. Grief humbles us. We judge less. We listen more. We slow down. These aren't just emotional skills. They are acts of humanity. They bond us across divides of age, background, belief, and experience. In grieving, we join a larger story, the story of love and loss, and what it means to be human. We inherit the wisdom of those who came before us. We pass it on not with lectures, but with presence, steadiness, and quiet compassion. Sometimes grief inspires change. We push for better support systems. We start foundations, write, speak, organize. Our personal pain becomes the seed of collective healing. It's not always big. Often, it's simply being someone who shows up when others don't. In these acts, pain becomes purpose, not through force, but through grace. We ask, what would it mean for this loss to matter? What would it mean for this love to live on? Answers differ, but the impact is real. One kind word, one listening ear, one gesture may remind someone that life still holds light. While grief starts in separation, it can lead to connection, not just with the one we lost in a new form, but with others in a deeper way. It widens our hearts for the world. This is one of grief's quiet gifts. Its power to connect, to help us see more clearly, to love more deeply, to stand in sorrow and rise in hope. We'll still have lonely days. We'll still ache for who's gone, but we're no longer lost. We are part of something greater, sacred, human, real. Grief shows us the truth of belonging. We belong to each other in pain and healing, in memory and love. We carry each other just as we carry those we've lost. And when we hold space for another, honor their sorrow, remember their loved one, we carry the light beyond our own grief. We become part of the healing. This is how grief becomes love again, how pain becomes presence, how sorrow becomes strength, how we honor our shared humanity with tenderness, courage, and connection. The Light Beyond Loss, Part 10, Full Circle. There comes a time, not marked on any calendar, when we realize we've come full circle, not back to where we started, but to a new place entirely, a place where grief no longer rules our days, but still lives gently in the corners of our lives, a place where love remains strong, and the memory of who we lost breathes through everything we do. This full circle isn't an end, it's a transformation. A moment of stillness where we look back and see how far we've come. The nights we thought we wouldn't survive. The mornings we dragged ourselves into daylight. The laughter that returned like sunlight through clouds. The memories that softened instead of stung. Grief doesn't disappear, but it becomes quieter, more tender. It stops shouting and starts whispering. It reminds us rather than overwhelms us. It becomes not a weight, but a thread, woven into who we are. We carry that thread with grace. We bring it into our work, our relationships, our creative expressions. We allow it to make us more human, more honest, more aware. We stop measuring life by what we've lost and start honoring life by what we've lived. And we live. We really live with an ache that never fully vanishes, yes, but also with a depth of joy that only those who've known sorrow can feel. We savor the good moments more. We show up for the people we love. We speak our truth. We take nothing for granted. This is the light beyond loss, the life that continues, not in spite of our grief, but shaped by it. A life that glows with the love we still carry. A life that honors what came before and what still lies ahead. It's not perfect, it's real, and it's ours. Sometimes we revisit the deepest parts of our mourning, a birthday, an anniversary, a place that holds meaning. These moments don't take us back to the beginning, but they invite us to remember, to reconnect, to reflect on who we were and who we've become. And who we've become is someone who can hold contradictions. We can laugh and cry in the same breath. We can long for someone and still open our hearts to others. We can feel joy without guilt and pain without fear. Grief has taught us this balance. It has taught us that life is not black and white, but made of layers. That healing is not forgetting, and remembering is not always painful. That love is expansive, and the heart is more resilient than we ever imagined. We now understand that grief is not a detour, it's a part of the journey, one that strips away what doesn't matter and reveals what always did, one that connects us to others in profound ways, one that shows us how strong we are, even when we feel weak, And in this understanding, we begin to give back, not out of obligation, but from a place of knowing. We become mentors, companions, healers. We say the words others once said to us: "You are not alone. You will survive this. There is still beauty ahead." Because there is always beauty ahead, even if we can't see it at first. There is still music to hear, love to give, sunsets to witness, hands to hold. And when we allow ourselves to believe in that again, we honor not just life, but also loss. We honor those we've loved and lost by living with open hearts, by saying their names, by telling their stories, by becoming living testaments to their impact. And we pass that light on to our children, our communities, our friends, strangers. We become carriers of comfort, bearers of wisdom, keepers of love. And in this way, our grief doesn't just shape us, it shapes the world. This is the legacy we leave, not just what we built, but how we loved. Not just what we lost, but how we found our way back to light. And so, wherever you are on your journey, whether the wound is fresh or the scar is old, know this: you are not alone. Your grief is valid. Your love is real. Your healing is possible. You don't need to rush it. You don't need to hide it. You only need to keep going, keep breathing, keep remembering, keep loving. The light beyond loss is not somewhere outside of you. It's already inside you, quiet, steady, waiting. Let it grow. Let it guide you. Let it be the proof that even in the face of sorrow, life still holds light. And when the time comes, share that light. Offer it to someone still walking through the dark. Be the reminder, the encouragement, the living hope. Because the greatest truth of all is this: love never ends. Not really. It changes form, it moves, it evolves, but it stays in us, through us, between us, forever.